Chapter 10 The Silent Voice. That night, before going to bed, Mei Ling tucked away the little drawing she had been working on instead of her math assignment. She slid it under a book in her drawer, away from her mother's curious eyes, and settled into the chair facing the window. She was tired and confused about their experience in the diamond field and had been drawing as a way to relax. Now she took a rare moment to lean her head back in the chair and let her thoughts drift, undisciplined. She noticed an especially bright star in the sky and wondered if it was a planet. As she stared at it, she remembered the field of diamonds and the delicious experience of being bodiless, of floating free from pressure, tension, stress, and worry. That is your true form. She heard a voice as if it was inside her head, but its clarity and power told her that it was not her own thought. This body is a costume. You are a diamond star, a sparkling being of life energy that inhabits the body. In spite of the strangeness of hearing a disembodied voice, Mei Ling found its presence very soothing. The brief experience of silent communication with the others in the field of diamonds made this ethereal contact comfortable. "Who are you?" she asked aloud, unsure what to say. In that moment, she felt herself surrounded by a warm, glowing energy, like being wrapped in a blanket. "I am the Silent One." The room was filled with light and pulsated with power. "Although I have many names in many languages, I am the one they call God." Mei Ling could hear her heartbeat, steady and slow. She wasn't sure she believed in God. "What are you doing here?" "Sweet child, I am here to give you the knowledge and power to create a better world. If you make the effort to understand the secrets, they will change you. As you change, the world will change. But do not fear, I will be with you the entire time." Silence lingered after the voice was gone. Tess was complaining of a sore stomach. She was lying on the sofa when Emily's dad arrived home from work. He often had to work late, which left the girls alone with the IE after school and into the evening. When he saw the look on Emily's face, he knew she needed a bit of space. "Hey," he said to Tess, "why don't we go out and get a DVD from the corner store?" Tess perked up instantly. She loved movies, and the corner store had hundreds of cheap pirated DVDs for sale. "Okay." She leapt up and pulled her coat down from the stand. "Do you want to come, Em?" Dad asked. "No, you guys go ahead," she said, grateful that he had guessed her needs. She knew they'd be gone for a while. It took Tess ages to choose from all the options. Emily pulled out her homework, happy for a chance to focus on it without feeling she was abandoning her sister. Dad and Tess returned half an hour later with a movie about a brave young girl, and Tess went off to bed with no more complaints of a sore tummy. In the middle of the night, Emily was awakened by a sudden blast of cold air. When she brushed her fingers through her hair, they came out wet. The room was dark, and she stared up at the ceiling, blinking to clear her eyes, and it dissolved the image she was seeing, but it would not disappear. Across the ceiling, painted like a Michelangelo mural, was a pair of eyes. They were kind and inviting, and when Emily looked into them, she felt like she was falling into a deep pool of peace. Serenity blossomed in her mind. Suddenly, the eyes were replaced by a myriad of scenes, flashing one after the other in front of her eyes. Bombs dropped from the sky in firestorms, destroying everything below. Natural calamities, floods and tidal waves, earthquakes, erupting volcanoes, storms of every kind wreaked havoc on the scarred face of the earth. Humans and animals ran wildly about. On all sides there were wails of pain and horror, rivers of blood, panic, desperation, and death. Rain poured down, waves of rushing water filled the streets, covering the houses, buildings toppled as vast cuts opened in the earth. Do you hear their cries? She heard the voice before she saw the speaker, a human body, barely visible, outlined in white light, coming toward her. Then suddenly millions of lights flew upwards like a swarm of fireflies, just as they had seen in the field of diamonds. The man of light reached out to her to give her something. She felt him place a crown on her head. Wear this, he said. It will help you understand the secrets. Both the crown and the speaker vanished. The next thing Emily knew, Tess was shaking her awake to get ready for school. Emily replayed the dream in her mind all morning. Somehow it seemed important to remember the details. The images were so similar to the ones she had seen on stage with Dr. Ravana that she knew that they were relevant for the assignment. Although she wanted to tell somebody about it, she couldn't think of anyone who would understand. She stood at the sink in the girls' washroom, washing her hands and staring at her face in the mirror. Beth was standing at the sink next to her, talking excitedly about their volleyball game after school. Emily was only half listening when she noticed Mei Ling behind her, gently pushing her way through a group of girls to get to one of the sinks. "Hey, Mei Ling." Emily turned, shaking her wet hands to dry them. Mei Ling looked startled, clearly not expecting anyone to speak to her. She shifted her weight from foot to foot nervously, as if ready to run at any minute. She had never spoken to Emily outside of the library, except for the diamond field. Emily noticed Mei Ling's discomfort. "Where are you going next? Can I walk with you to your next class?" she asked. Sure, I guess," Mei Ling nodded and washed her hands while Emily said goodbye to Beth and waited. They left the washroom together and walked slowly down the hall. Mei Ling's head was bent over her books as though to protect her from the sea of people. Emily, on the other hand, held her head high, scanning the crowd for familiar faces. "I have something to tell you, but I don't really know how to start," Emily said, then paused, waiting for a reaction. When Mei Ling did not respond, she continued, "I had a weird dream last night, and I think it's important, but I'm not sure how." Mei Ling stopped and looked at Emily, uncertain if she should share her own unusual experience. "What was in the dream?" she asked quietly. When Emily shared the details of her dream, Mei Ling recognized the same voice from her experience. Before she could tell Emily about it, they arrived at Mei Ling's classroom. "I had something happen to me as well," Mei Ling said. Emily nodded encouragingly. "Okay, tell me during lunch." "Do you think it really was God?" asked Mei Ling. She and Emily were sitting together at one of the corner tables in the crowded cafeteria. "God? I don't know about that." Emily unwrapped her chickpea salad as she spoke. Mei Ling was relieved that Emily had not reacted with shock or disbelief when she told her about the voice while they waited in line. "When I was a kid," continued Emily, "I thought God was an old man with a white beard in the clouds." She took a forkful of salad. "Buddhism teaches about karma and rebirth and giving up desire in order to end all suffering," said Mei Ling. "There's no mention of God." The noise in the cafeteria was reaching a crescendo as students swarmed around them, their trays loaded with milk boxes, steaming noodle soup containers, soft drinks, and French fries. A silver fork clambered to the floor at Mei Ling's feet, and she bent to retrieve it, passing it to a young girl with curly blonde hair who smiled in gratitude. "God is supposed to be stern, demanding, and sometimes angry," Emily said, digging up her childhood impression of God. "Not really someone you'd want to get close to." "Well, that's not at all like the sweet, gentle voice I heard," said Mei Ling. She stared off into space as she recalled the experience. It was in the book as the second secret, remember? Emily asked. That's right, said Mei Ling, the chapter called The Silent Voice. Do you think we should tell Raj and Solomon? She asked. Let's wait a bit, Emily said. Raj would just laugh at us if we told him. If the silent voice has spoken to us, maybe it will speak to the boys as well. Let's let them experience it for themselves. Mei Ling nodded, and they settled into a comfortable silence as they ate their lunch. That night, Raj spoke with his sister on Skype. Hey, Ramita, how are you? He asked, smiling at her image on his computer screen. Oh, Raj, this house is wonderful, and my mother-in-law is so kind. She's happy that I continue to work outside the home. For now, until the baby comes, she gushed. Her bangles jangled as she pushed her hair back from her face. And how are you, Raj? What's Beijing like? How are Auntie and Uncle to live with? How's school? Tell me all. Ramita had initiated the call, and Raj was happy to reconnect with her. He had almost forgotten how close they used to be. It's okay. Auntie and Uncle are a lot like Mom and Dad. School is the same, except there are a lot of kids from other countries, of course. Apart from that, the city is brown and dirty, and the air is even darker than Delhi. I might even miss the place a bit, he admitted, sheepishly. Aha! So the one who was so keen to escape is finding the grass is not greener, she laughed, making fun of him like old times. They talked for a few more minutes about silly things like baby names and the food in Beijing. After a brief lull in the conversation, Ramita said, Mummy's worried about Dad. He comes home late every night. She looked down for a moment. Raj, she told me about some nasty rumors concerning his company. Oh, the same old nonsense, no doubt, said Raj. Old news. No, these are different, Raj. Much worse. I don't know if I should even tell you about them. They're really bad. I don't want to know, he said. Let's not talk about it, okay? There was silence for a moment. When Raj spoke again, his tone was softened. How is Mummy? She worries, Raj. Every day she calls me and tells me how worried she is about Dad, about the company, about our reputation, about you being so far away, about me not being pregnant. You know how she is. Ramita smiled as if she was talking about a child. They finished the call with a promise to talk soon. Raj removed his headphones and slowly pulled on his nightshirt, wondering whether it was these nasty rumors that had prompted Ramita to contact him. What could possibly be so bad that she wasn't sure she should tell him? Raj didn't like being in the dark about anything, but what was the point of listening to rumors? No doubt they were untrue. Chapter 11. The Feather of Truth. Solomon and Raj had arrived at the scheduled time and sat in silence, waiting for the girls to appear. Although they did not acknowledge each other's presence, their heads bobbed in unison as they moved back and forth between checking the wall clock and their cell phones. Sorry, we just finished, Mei Ling rushed into the library from her meeting with the math club, the mathletes. Breathless and flustered, she dropped her bag on the floor, 15 minutes late for their planned start. Emily arrived, sweaty from volleyball practice, still in her shorts and team t-shirt. Sorry, I didn't have time to shower, she said, slumping into the chair between Raj and Solomon. Hey, it's cold in here today. She reached for her jacket. What's going on? She asked, looking pointedly at Mei Ling. Raj noticed a look pass between the two girls, as though they were sharing a secret of some kind. Let's get started, he said, abruptly ending the chit-chat. He still couldn't believe he was participating in this project, nor could he believe that it would make any difference to world events. The morning news announced another massive earthquake, this time in New Zealand, and a hurricane in Mexico. Thousands had died. Surely nothing the four of them were doing could have prevented that. They sat quietly, trying to recreate the conditions that led them to the diamond field. Mei Ling started speaking slowly, trying to calm herself as she spoke. She reminded them to breathe, aware of the irony that in spite of her earlier fear of Dr. Ravana, She was now copying her tone and instructions. Once they had all closed their eyes, a strange metallic glare filled the room. Raj rustled in his chair, struggling to relax. Solomon reached down to tie his shoelace. Emily ran both hands through her hair, scratching her scalp, unable to concentrate. "I'm not getting it," Raj broke the pained silence after 5 long minutes. "This is boring and unproductive." "I can see the screen in my head, but I'm not sure what we're supposed to be seeing there," said Solomon. He opened his eyes. "Hey, what's with the light in here?" Emily had also opened her eyes. "You're right. The light isn't right in here." She gave her head a little shake. "Never mind," she said. "We have to do something that gives us the same feeling as before. You know, that feeling of being totally relaxed and quiet inside and focused." Again, she and Mei Ling exchanged a look that went unnoticed by Solomon, but caught Raj's attention. "Okay, let's try again," said Mei Ling. She sat upright in her chair. "Everybody concentrate." The instructions came more easily this time, and Mei Ling's calming voice helped them relax. They sat still long enough for the atmosphere between them to become quiet. The metallic haze around them faded away. Finally, when they were each absorbed in their own inner world, there was silence. Emily recognized the feeling of peace as her body relaxed and her mind began to calm. Solomon felt his shoulders drop and his breathing deepen as he entered a quiet, reflective state of mind. Mei Ling felt calm and focused, powerful. Raj felt serene, his thoughts finally slowing down. They opened their eyes. They were in a cold place, surrounded by darkness. "It feels like a tunnel," said Solomon, reaching his hands out to touch the wet, earthy walls on either side of him. "We're underground." "Smells like it," said Raj. "We might as well follow the walls and see where they lead." Mei Ling realized she must be near the front as she could hear footsteps behind her, squishing in mud or water. Emily sniffled loudly. She was beginning to get a stuffy nose from the damp air. Solomon knew he was at the rear of the line because there was no sound behind him. Water splashed to the ground as they walked, the occasional drop landing on their head. "It's cold," squeaked Mei Ling as a cold breeze blew past. She shivered. "You okay?" Emily asked, responding to her whimper. "Low blood sugar. I didn't have enough to eat today," Mei Ling confided quietly. Finally, the walls of the tunnel widened, and light poured in through a triangular opening. It was a doorway that led them into a 3-sided room with smooth stone walls. The walls stretched above them, taller than a 2-story house and as wide as a city street. The tops of the walls fell in on each other like in a steeple or the inside of a pyramid. "It's dry in here," said Solomon, gasping. Hieroglyphics covered the walls, like the kind they had studied in their module on ancient Egypt. "I think we're inside a pyramid," Mei Ling said, stating the obvious. Against the far wall stood a table that looked like an altar. It was made of dark wood, embellished with images of snakes, eagles, and pharaohs. On the center of the table stood a golden scale with 2 hanging bowls, balanced equally on either side of a support beam. "It's like the scales they use to weigh vegetables in the market," said Solomon, taking a step toward the table. "Or the symbol of justice," said Raj. He turned to examine the hieroglyphics on the wall. Mei Ling was the first to approach the altar and see what lay in one of the bowls. "It's a feather," she said without touching it. "A feather? That's it?" asked Raj from the other side of the room. Emily approached the altar. "Oh, it's like the story of Mat's feather, the Egyptian goddess of the afterlife," she said. "Yeah, I never figured out how they could weigh a human heart to determine a person's destiny," Solomon said. He stepped forward to stand with Emily and Mei Ling. "Especially against a feather," Mei Ling added. Every heart would be heavier than the feather." Doesn't seem fair. How would anyone get into the afterlife then? Emily asked. A lot of people must have stayed between worlds to suffer for eternity. Solomon looked down at the feather, a fragile determinant of an individual's fate. Well, that's a cheery proposition, said Raj, joining them at the altar. As they spoke, the massive stone door to the chamber swung shut, making a hideous scraping sound that reverberated through the sealed room. A flash of light left a metallic haze like heat waves shimmering across the room. Oh my God, gasped Mei Ling. The metallic flash made her think of Dr. Ravana's bizarre appearance. Was that Ravana? Is this how she's going to stop us? By trapping us? Asked Emily. I suspect she hasn't even really started to make things difficult, Raj said calmly. So I guess we're stuck in here until one of us gives up our heart. Who will it be? Mei Ling shuddered, and Solomon gave Raj a disapproving look. Very funny, he said. Then something clicked. This is the feather of truth from the book. Right, it's a test of conscience. In India, it's known as the law of karma, said Raj. Well, how do you test a conscience? Asked Mei Ling. I nominate King Solomon to find out. After all, he's probably never done anything wrong, said Raj, his voice dripping with disdain. A rush of anger pushed Solomon toward Raj. He wasn't sure what he would do, but he stopped suddenly when he saw the feather rising into the air. Without thinking, Solomon jumped to grab the feather as it lifted upwards. The minute it touched his skin, he felt an odd sensation. His head felt light, and he had a floating feeling like he was leaving his body. Little by little, he felt himself rising like a helium balloon into the air. He could see the room below as he hovered above it, and was shocked to see his body crumpled on the floor, and Mei Ling kneeling beside it, her brow furrowed as she held his hand. Solomon, are you okay? Solomon! Emily shouted into his ear, while Mei Ling shook him, and Raj stood by, watching. Can you hear me? Solomon shouted down at them from the ceiling, but no one looked up. Guys, I'm up here. Can't you see me? Oh, great, thought Solomon. They can't hear me. Suddenly, he began to see pictures. They flashed across his mind like 1,000 movies playing at the same time. Although he could see each individual picture as if it was the only one on the screen, he recognized scenes from his life. He saw himself as a baby. He remembered being in his crib and looking at the world on the other side through the bars. He could see the floor and his dad's shoes and his mom's slippers. Sweet innocence filled his mind. Then he saw himself as a grade 4 student in the school cafeteria, rushing to find a seat so the woman at the cash register wouldn't notice she had given him extra change. Oh, how cowardly, he thought. He felt a wave of humiliation, seeing how he had behaved for a few coins. Then he saw himself swimming in the big pool at the community center, his arms reaching over his head like windmills, pulling the water down past his sides and propelling his body forward like a torpedo. He felt free and powerful. Then he saw himself and his friend David racing to reach the bench in the schoolyard. Solomon was sharing part of his sandwich because David didn't have lunch again. He felt bad for David, who never seemed to have what was needed at school. Then he saw a different scene in the schoolyard. A boy in his 7th grade class was taunting him because of Solomon's good grades. The boy pushed him against the fence and punched him in the stomach. Solomon bent over, scared and humiliated. Then he got angry and punched back. But he wasn't fast enough. He missed, and his hand bashed into the fence. His pride and his hand hurt. Each scene flashed across his mind, then quickly dissolved into another. His feelings changed with each scene change. One minute he was scared, then happy, then ashamed, as he reacted to the memories playing out in front of him. He saw a small group of people standing around his father's casket as it was lowered to the ground. His arm was around his mom's shoulder, and Ben was holding her other hand while she cried into a white handkerchief. Then he saw himself after his father's death, pacing in his room, trying to think of a way to make money. Then he was slumped on his bed with his head in his hands, crying. He felt the despair of his younger self as keenly as if it was happening in the present moment. He was in the stairwell last week when Mei Ling dropped her books, and a kid pushed her out of the way. She looked flustered and afraid, and he saw himself reach out to help her pick up her books. She looked up at him in surprise, a small, grateful smile on her face. The images stopped as suddenly as they had started. He felt the floor against his side and someone's hands on his head. He heard a voice, thick and slow, trying to reach him through a haze. "Solomon!" Emily's voice suddenly came through, loud and clear. Behind them, the feather floated gently down and landed in its original position on the scale. The door to the chamber swung open, and they found themselves back in the library. "What happened?" he asked. It took effort to formulate his words. They sounded slow and muddled in his ears. "You weren't breathing." Mei Ling looked shaken but relieved. Solomon tried to clear his mind. "It was like being in a theater with a 3D movie playing in my head," he said slowly, "only I was the main actor and the audience. I saw all kinds of scenes from my life, things I had done, things that were done to me. Mostly memories that left a strong impression, good and bad. How long was I gone?" "Solomon, you didn't go anywhere," Emily responded. "But you seemed dead. Your body just lay there without moving. We checked your breathing, we shook you, but we couldn't wake you up. It was awful." "So it was like the diamond field," he observed. "No, we couldn't hear your thoughts," Mei Ling said. "We couldn't tell what was going on with you." "I was right there the whole time. I could see you, I could hear you," he said. "I was calling down to you from the ceiling, but you couldn't hear me." "So tell us, what's this secret all about, since you're the only one who knows?" asked Raj. He was clearly annoyed that Solomon was getting all the attention. "I don't have it figured out, but I can tell you one thing. It was tough to watch the scenes I wasn't proud of," Solomon said. "So did you get your conscience weighed?" Raj persisted. "I think so." Solomon smiled sheepishly, remembering the embarrassing scenes. "Maybe you'll make it to the afterlife then," Raj grumbled, and he strode briskly out of the library.